Let's go. Deltastring deep dives, the first, numero uno. So we have been familiar with this platform, BoldDesk, and recently they've really amped up the way they are trying to communicate, particularly with people who are maybe feeling a bit like they're being left by the sidelines by Zendesk in terms of getting the best out of the platform. They're feeling like maybe the direction that's going in isn't aligned with their businesses. So they've been really aggressively marketing to Zendesk customers. We're going to go into what is BoldDesk, how is it to configure, how is it to work in as an agent, who it's for, where the compromises are. But we're going to start off taking a step back and looking at the vendor that provides BoldDesk.
Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got. So what brought this to my attention was seeing this post on their LinkedIn page, right, where BoldDesk are drawing attention to Zendesk's long contracts and rising costs. Now, we have had a lot of conversations around this. You know, we've got clients who are asking, we've had meetings with prospects, and people are saying, you know, Zendesk are asking for a lot of cash. There was a time where Zendesk was a good kind of budget option. Nowadays, that's less the case. Well, BoldDesk here will buy out the rest of your contracts so you can switch without risk. Now that is a big offer, and they include free migration. So with that in mind, I got in touch with BoldDesk and had a look over what they're offering.
Now, BoldDesk is a product of a business called Syncfusion, and Syncfusion are a well-established engineering company. Now, they are primarily North Carolina based, I believe, though I know that they have an engineering hub in Nairobi, and they also have a lot of people located in India. Now, we've recently seen that Nairobi has become a really interesting spot for good ideas, things that you would think of investing in, interesting products are going to come out of there. I would compare the way that the Nairobi startup scene is looking to how we were seeing like Kyiv and Tallinn a few years ago. So I think there's a lot of exciting products coming out of there, and I think a lot of the team that work on BoldDesk are from that Nairobi base. So that's really interesting to me. Now, Syncfusion are not a SaaS vendor per se. What they provide as their kind of headline product is this toolkit of UI elements and kind of pre-built, configured pieces that you can pull together to build your own SaaS products. So it's a platform for developing SaaS products on. And that's very interesting to me. You know, we've been working on different product concepts here, and some of these have gotten to quite a fleshed out level. And what people like to see in these platforms is the kind of batteries included thing, right? To know that you can get going, get something launched, and there's not going to be a whole load of friction from idea to MVP. What Syncfusion are providing is that straightforward route, and in the process of that, they've built out a whole range of kind of basic applications to kind of demonstrate what the platform does. Now, they do bespoke engineering too for various businesses, and we're not going to go too deeply into the specifics of Syncfusion and their model, but what they have built is BoldDesk, and BoldDesk has come out of using their own tools to build a Zendesk replacement. And I think specifically they are describing it as a Zendesk replacement, and they are specifically marketing to people who have been using Zendesk and are finding it to be getting more expensive, and a lot of the new capability is not aligned with the challenges that these businesses are facing. We're talking, I guess, the mid-market here, right? Now, so what we did, we dived into BoldDesk, we set up a trial instance, we went and did some configuration, we looked around the different objects there are, and then we looped back and got in touch with them and had a good conversation with them about just to get a sense of where this product is going and what the future looks like.
Now, when you start a BoldDesk trial, when you're first setting up a BoldDesk account, something really important that it asks you is, where do you want your data to be stored? This is something that a lot of businesses are asking in 2026 is, what jurisdiction is our customer data, our employee data living in? BoldDesk, Syncfusion, they offer the options of US, EU, Australia and India. That's something that's very important, and I think increasingly important with the global situations and the different jurisdictions that you need to operate in.
Now, I think one positive about Syncfusion is they're a very well-established company. They've been building software for a long time and they're not about to disappear. I get a strong sense from Syncfusion that they have identified that there is a market for this. They've built this out as kind of an exercise in using their own tooling, but that doesn't mean this isn't a product they're looking at developing and supporting for a long time. And that's very much the sense that I get from the conversations I've had with them, which have been very positive. They've got really great documentation around what they're doing. They have a great roadmap. They're fleshing out their partner programs. So if you're people like us that are looking at, are we going to be maybe implementing this thing in the future? Then they reply to emails very quickly. They're very interested in what we're working on. And for me, these are very positive things. So having spent some time over the last 3 weeks going around the Syncfusion ecosystem, and particularly looking to understand the BoldDesk platform, I think this is a product that I would confidently recommend to a range of businesses. Now, I think that the way that it's packaged up and the way the kind of pre-built workflows and the sort of templated things are all configured is that they are looking specifically at these growing sort of small to mid-market B2C, maybe retailers, service providers, things of that ilk. I think they are, maybe it's a bit more advanced and a bit more configurable, a bit more capable than something like Gorgeous, but it doesn't have that, specific sort of Shopify integrations and that specific kind of embedded nature for it. Going around the BoldDesk platform, it feels like it's been made by a team of humans that were in solid contact with each other the whole time, and it's a very, very coherent product to use. If you've set up a trigger over here and you want to change a view, if you want to change a form, what have you, it feels the same to do all of these things, and that's not the case with platforms that have that maybe longer legacy and all that technical debt of something like using Salesforce Service Cloud, using Zendesk, of course.
Let's move on to having a quick look around the platform. Now here you'll notice we've dropped into, we're in a pending tickets view. Let's go into an all tickets view, and we've just got a couple of sample tickets here. Now we can see the interface is broadly similar to what you'd expect in Zendesk. Now I like the information density over here of the requested details section, and I quite like having that on the right and having the views on the left. You can hide this section as well. I've got it pinned here. You can expand it and hide it and drop into different views. And I think this is a very opinionated platform in terms of how your agents are going to work. Now there's a continuum of kind of a more bare bones Lego build your own support tool through to batteries included. Everything's kind of all set up for you, and BoldDesk is unashamedly at the opinionated, this is how you're going to use it end of things. And honestly, I'm happy with the bulk of the decisions here. You've got quite a lot visible. Bear in mind, I'm logged in as an administrator, so there are always going to be tools here that are visible that, features you would enable or not enable for your agents. Now I like up here straight away, switch to dark theme. I'm going to be clicking that straight up. And then here we go, and it's rather nice and coherent. It's very similar to the default dark theme in Slack or Visual Studio, which are two applications that I just basically always have open. So it looks nice and familiar. Things are where I expect them to be. We've got some contact details over here. We've got our applications tab. We've got side conversations option over here, which again is where you would find it in Zendesk on the right hand panel. Your requested details and things like that would live over in the left. But look, we've got more of a kind of inboxy view here. This is going to be familiar to people who have been previously using Outlook. So if your support has been in Outlook previously, you're not now going to be going, where do I find anything, right? It's obvious. Here are our different conversations and our different ways of sorting them in the views panel here, which we can pin open. You can quite quickly modify a view. You click these three dots here and you've got your view settings and things you can change here. It's set as a default view, add to favorites, and we can just show you, let's add to favorites. Here we are, and it now lives in a favorites bit at the top here. And the bulk of the way people are going to be working in a platform like this is they're going to be living in a view and working sort of top down. And everything is kind of where you expect it to be, and I think that's a really important starting point. Is no agents are going to need loads and loads of time going, oh, this is a bit different, what have you. Everything's going to be where you expect it. You've got these additional panels across the top here, which very much looks to me like the way things look in Outlook, less like they do in Zendesk, which I think is a good thing, right? I think it's very straightforward to see, right, what are the links from this conversation, what are the attachment files, what have you. And of course we're looking at an omnichannel situation here, so it doesn't fundamentally matter to the agent where this message comes from. This one shows that it's from the customer portal. Often these are going to be emails, they're going to be chats from here and there, and we'll look at how we connect channels in a moment.
So in terms of configuring BoldDesk, everything is kind of called what you'd expect it to be. Everything is where you look for it in the platform, and getting started on it if you've previously configured other systems, and I'm specifically thinking of Zendesk here because they have particularly tried to replicate that functionality and that way of working, then for me it's like building out a Zendesk but better at that beginner level. Now there are also a lot of capabilities around API, webhooks, things like that, where you can integrate with other systems, and they actually have built a huge amount of integrations. You look through their integrations library and it'll bounce tickets over to your Slack or all different systems that you might want to use. And if you're looking to connect maybe a custom application layer, then you're going to be able to do that in a quite straightforward way. And that's something that we would definitely feel very confident that we could build out very rapidly and test in a very straightforward way from my experimenting around the BoldDesk ecosystem.
Now, if we go into the administration settings, which over here in admin, then you can see things are broadly called what you'd expect them to be called. I like that ticket automation here. It covers a range of different things. We've got auto assignments. This is analogous to, from Zendesk, your omnichannel routing. Create ticket triggers. And I think that the way you create triggers, again, is just very much how you expect them to look. You can work in calendar hours, or you can set up different business schedules, and your triggers run within the schedule that you enable here, which I think is super great, because I find it to be a bit of a pain in Zendesk that you can't tell it, don't send kind of triggered responses out of hours, things like that, automation responses out of hours. It can be a bit of a faff to do that, where you've got to have a kind of business schedule that sets on, and maybe there are times where you'd want to send an automated response or email to a customer that aren't necessarily aligned with the times where your teams are available. So having the options for different schedules and to have different triggers and different automations run according to different schedules, I think is a really nice option. Time triggers here is what in Zendesk land we would call automations compared to triggers, and I think that's a more logical name, is a time trigger. So again, it checks against them every hour, works just as you're used to. You can export them, which is super nice. And if you look at the interface, the way that the time triggers, automations work, the way that they're listed, the way that they're added to the platform is identical to each other. And the whole platform has this really coherent thing to it, which really beats doing the same thing in Zendesk. And I think if I took 20 experienced platform admins and said, right, set up this macro, this trigger, this automation, and just kind of gave them a set of things to configure, some SLAs, this and that, just your standard functions, I think even experienced Zendesk admins would probably find that BoldDesk is quicker.
Who would I recommend to avoid BoldDesk? I think at this point it doesn't feel like they're looking to migrate the mega huge enterprise instances over to BoldDesk. Now, I dare say if someone approached them, then they would say, no, we're up for that challenge, we will take that on, we will get that sorted, and we will leave you real happy. Because they are making a lot of promises in terms of moving Zendesks into BoldDesk, and that particularly is a path that's going to be very, very straightforward. The way that the things are called in triggers and the way the triggers operate is very, very similar. And so if you're just, if you're very heavy on the standard Zendesk objects and you're not doing loads of custom and complex stuff, then moving to BoldDesk is going to be really rapid. You could certainly have it done in maybe 10 working days if you had dedicated consultants. And that's a package that we offer, and we do migrations. We've done migrations sort of from Gorgeous, from people who've sort of set up a Salesforce Service Cloud, but it hasn't been kind of real embedded into the way they've worked. That's been straightforward to kind of lift and shift. Those kind of jobs can be done quite rapidly. And I think if you are a small to medium business that's providing services or products to the public, to consumers rather than to businesses, and you're not feeling very happy with the Zendesk features, with maybe getting communication from people at Zendesk, or you're finding ultimately that Zendesk doesn't feel like it's quite as modern and quite having that kind of down the road longevity capability, and you're thinking, we're not sure how we feel about this, then this might well be the tool for you. I see BoldDesk systems as being very, very maintainable. It's very straightforward to identify we need to change these triggers, these macros, and to understand how your workflows work. What would I like to see them is a bit more in the way of understanding the kind of implementation engineers that a lot of companies have now, or the kind of OpEx kind of stuff of templating out how workflows work, and then having maybe your configuration version control, be able to A/B test things in, across a couple of instances, things like that. And I think that that's where they've got room to grow.
Certainly I and plenty of other Zendesk experts do not necessarily advise using Zendesk Explore for your real reporting, for really digging into that data, and instead recommend pipe everything over to your data lake and then use Power BI and have your actual data people look at it. And Explore is instead a good tool for people who are managing agents or just need to understand things quite quickly. I think the same is true of BoldDesk, but I don't see businesses at that scale at this point moving to BoldDesk and having these issues. Now, I don't know what it precisely is about BoldDesk, but I don't see these huge scale migrations happening at this time. I think there's a lot of momentum with Zendesk, and I think the way that Zendesk deal with the super huge accounts is very, very different to how they work with some of the smaller businesses there. But if I were a retailer or a sort of a B2C business that is at that point on the curve where I'm starting to need, I'm going, right, we're going to need a platform, we have to get out of just having a shared inbox, then BoldDesk, I think, is going to be quicker to get up and running with and have something that's going to be functional than Zendesk. A new Zendesk instance is very, very bare bones, and it doesn't have this kind of tutorialized stuff here that we get. And the whole platform, as you go around when you first set it up, it tells you, right, contact support, request a demo. Right down here, this is actually a BoldDesk chat for BoldDesk support. So anything you want to ask about it, it surfaces a thing from their documentation. I found this to be really good as well. And it's a nice looking widget, right? So it shows that in their own platform, they've got embedded the live chat to get help from them, which uses their platform. And that shows a great level of dog fooding, right? They test it, they know how it works. And there is this through and through coherence I see in BoldDesk that I find really exciting. Now these kind of recommended items here, that they have videos for how to set up your basic stuff. So if you're someone who has found yourself as a support manager, who's maybe started off just being the support person at a business, and now they're saying, right, you need to go and get 5-10 more people and set up a platform, you're actually going to find these videos do tell you how to get the bulk of stuff done, and they talk you through the whole process. There are some workflows here that you can see. There's a video here showing how to do this, and then you click directly through. Here you are. Here's how you set up your ticket form. And everything works the way you expect. When you're in Zendesk and you're doing something like maybe trying to get a list of all your triggers or something, the web interface does really irritating things. Like as you scroll down your list of triggers, it unloads the ones that are outside of the browser view, right? So things, as they go off screen, They're unloaded from the browser. If you open your element inspector, you can see. And then you can't kind of grab at the top and just get a list of them all, which sometimes you just need a list of all your macros and you don't want to go and export them all through the API or whatever it is, right? And these things can be just unnecessarily hassle. Whereas if you look at, let's look at the ticket fields here, because it's going to be the easiest one to explain. If I want to look at my ticket fields here and it's got labels for them, what have you, right? Then I can just copy them all, but I can also, from here, just export them as an XLSX, right? And that's just so incredibly convenient and something that Zendesk could probably implement pretty rapidly. It's just having this export functionality on the screen where they are as you're an admin. But BoldDesk, they're people who've obviously used these platforms and gone, what do we like, what don't we like? And then they've built it in a very coherent way. The design is very intentional. Things are where you're looking for them.
It's going to be very straightforward to integrate kind of platform agnostic AI solutions into it as well. They do have, some AI solutions of their own. I haven't specifically evaluated those.
The pre-built reports are very comprehensive and cover kind of most of the things you're going to want to do, right? And they look very coherent with the platform. We can see there's no results here because I haven't got SLAs configured in this particular instance. But you can see how it's going to look. And then if you go back into the reports and you want to create your own dashboard, you can see how you get started. And then when you click through to create an actual query, then again, the way you go through the things is one thing that I really particularly liked about that actually was the natural language of it. So let's do test dash. Oh, hang on. I need to set that. I'll just send to private to me. Let's create it. Here we are. Let's add a widget. And then we've got a bunch of templates here. And this drop down effectively is our data sets, analogous to our data sets in Zendesk Explore. So let's stick with ticket and I don't know, unassigned tickets is fine. And then if you look at the different ways you can organize these, the way it does the calculations is very logical. The widget types are all going to be things we're very familiar with. The KPIs, so we have an arrow, an up and down, card, bullet, gauge, the way it aggregates these things, comparing to a previous period, the date filters, and it's just very straightforward. Everything is kind of explained in the way I'd want it to be. And here's some filtering options, right? So we can have which brand it's for, what the status is, the different ways you want to slice these things. And as I clicked through these options, I found it to be it has a shallower learning curve than Zendesk.
Without going into detail on the problems people are finding with Zendesk, I think BoldDesk are really keeping an eye on these things, and they are keen to specifically pick up businesses as they become unhappy with Zendesk. And they are one of quite a few businesses that I think in 2026 are going to spend the whole time circling like sharks around the big old frigate that is Zendesk, hoping that it springs a leak and people start jumping ship. So that's been our BoldDesk evaluation. And thanks very much to the good people of Syncfusion that we've had good conversations with as well. And there's more platforms on the way. And if there's anything you specifically want us to kind of dive into and look at in detail, any specific comparisons you want to make, or any further information you're after with these things, then I'm sure you can find how to get hold of me. But the best place is probably LinkedIn or email, and go to deltastring.com and get in touch. Cheers.